Hello, everybody. My name is Wigloff. I use they, them pronouns, and we are here at LFG Philly, a local queer meetup with our casters, Literose and CeeBee, to talk about just an intro to casting workshop for those who may not be familiar with the craft and those wanting to learn more. So I'm going to let both of you introduce yourselves and talk about some events that you've done recently. We'll start with you, Literose.
All right. Sorry, been feeling a little bit off. I am Literose. My real name is V. I am a trans woman. I use she, her pronouns. And I mainly am in the Rainbow Six space. And right now, about a month ago, a couple weeks ago, I started casting for the Tier 2 NA tournament Element. So that is probably the biggest thing that I've done in my career, and it's happening right now. So things are going well.
Before I go, I have someone else that I want to introduce. I brought with also. If you guys don't mind, I brought my emotional support pal, Whoopie.
Whoopie.
You can Whoopie. You can call him boy, whatever you want to call him. I just, he's gonna be here to, help get through this. Yeah, my name is Cassie Brown. I go by CeeBee. I mainly cast Overwatch, but I also do Apex Legends. Literally just yesterday, I was doing the Apex Rising charity pro-am, where we raised about $30,000. I think it was 31, nearly 32,000. We'll round it up and say 32,000 for red. And then on the Overwatch side, I'm mostly known for doing Calling All Heroes, which is, their marginalized gender player initiative, and it is phenomenal, by far one of the coolest things that I've ever gotten the chance to do. Very, very proud of the work I get to do there.
Tell me a little bit more about the Pro-Am charity, because I actually didn't hear too much about it. I saw it flash on my Twitter feed, but there was a lot of buzz. So
it was kind of like a last-minute thing that I thought for sure they had passed me up and gone with some other people, but I got the DM like earlier this week, and they were like, "Hey, we want to have you on for this again." It's the second time I've done it, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but yeah, it's just a big Apex Legends tournament where they take professional players and pair them up with a team with an amateur player and like a content creator, celebrity type person. That's your team of 3, and then they just go in and they play a whole like tournament bracket for charity. Everybody trying to raise money with their own communities.
That's really exciting, because it's really important to give all these upcoming players and also casters like yourself. I mean, at this point you are more established, but it's really cool to give them a chance to shine with these bigger creators and get that acknowledgement for their skills.
One of the things, real quick, just that I thought was really cool about it too, was one of the professional players actually let his amateur player, the pro player was Luxford from Meat Lovers, and he let an amateur player who's in the collegiate scene by the name of Zetrix basically take the reins, said, "No, you can go ahead and IGL the rest of the way out." And they pulled out some of the craziest wins I've ever seen. Like, no joke, twice they won it as like a 2-man squad towards the tail end of it. Just like, Zetrix in their third, Ava from the women's scene, or, I think it was like Ava and Luxford towards the end, but it was just insane. Like, letting some of the young up-and-comers, like, take the reins and then end up winning the whole damn tournament. Like, that was cool.
For those who aren't familiar, IGL and Apex Legends is pretty much the team leader who's calling all the shots, the plays, the brains of the
leader.
Exactly, the brains of the organization. So having that experience of not only being able to IGL in front of a large audience, but also being able to IGL with such powerful tools in your arsenal is a really big deal.
Yeah. And getting like that vote of confidence too from like the pro who's supposed to be like the team leader, who's supposed to be doing it. It's like, and what's funny is like they did it as like just kind of like an offhand thing. Like, we kind of need a change of pace. We're not really winning here. YOLO, let's have you IGL and see what happens. And then they just like win. And it's like, okay, wait, this is kind of crazy. We keep popping off with this. Like, that's huge. That's great for like a young up and coming player to get that vote of confidence there.
And speaking of up and coming players, let's talk a little bit about Element with the Rocket League. No, with Rainbow Six. You are not a Rocket League caster.
I've played Rocket League on like my Xbox. So.
I mean, mad respects to the Rocket League scene, because they have some crazy tech, but Rainbow Six.
Yeah. I mean, what specifically about it?
So I'm not too familiar with Element as well, so if you just talk a little bit more about the series.
Yeah, sure.
And
So originally, Rainbow Six had its Pro League scene, and then it had its Challenger League scene, which Challenger League, the winner would go on to face the loser of Pro League, or I guess the lowest rated team, and whoever won would go to Pro League. And then when Face It decided to not renew their contract, or Blast bought in, outbid them, whatever, Blast got control of the leagues in production. They axed Challenger League. So now we have Element, which instead of being a more year-long thing, stage by stage, which can last like 1 or 2 months, it is now essentially a 1-month tournament. Very, very small. Its prize pool is still 10K, but there's no direct pipeline up to Pro League compared to what CL was. So it's very different, and people are still getting used to it. It is the second iteration. We're in Element 2 now, but it is still just a joy to be involved, especially after watching Rainbow Six Challenger League for so long. And I'm glad I get to cast with some of the old Challenger League casters as well.
And it's on the main Rainbow Six Twitch page as well, right?
Yeah.
So at this point, then both of you have been on the main page for a game, which I think is really exciting. So also, just going off of that, is there how many other queer casters have you actually worked with throughout your careers and at the different levels?
I'll go first. I mean, because Light Rose was actually one of the first that I interacted with. So there's a lot of them at like the lower levels, especially in games, like Overwatch, where there is a lot of like grassroots support, and you can get a lot of these like anybody can realistically get into casting it. And there are a lot of queer people there. I've worked with people like K-Wing is another really good one. Chef Billy, who's actually been a little bit higher up the totem pole, but he's also a great shout. And having him in the Overwatch community, by the way, is incredible because he's the most like kind, sweet, supportive man in the entire world. I love him to death. But it gets a lot more thin and a lot more narrow the further up the totem pole you go. To the point where I start, like, I don't want to say I feel more and more alone, but I feel like, okay, there's less people above me that I can, like, draw from, talk about my specific problems.
Yeah, I mean, with Rainbow Six, I believe we actually had one of the first transgender casters at a Tier 1 level with Captain Fluke, who is a European caster. And she is, like, directly... I don't think hero is the right word for it, but I really do look up to her. She is an inspiration to me, and I hope that one day that I can work with her somehow. But, I mean, there's her. There's a trans man observer who I'm very good friends with. But other than that, genuinely looking in and around the scene when it comes to production, Rainbow Six doesn't really have anything. It has very, very sparing things, and it's just the kind of game that it is, the kind of community that it is, that it doesn't exactly cater itself to trans people, despite it, like, the people being absolutely loving. It doesn't have, like, I don't know how to say it, but Overwatch is a gayer game.
Yeah. You could say that about both Overwatch and Apex, honestly.
Yeah, they are objectively gayer. And it sounds weird. It sounds like I'm saying that in a negative context. I'm not.
I mean, Apex Legends has
such
a vast queer gay
unironically,
cast.
it's like half of the cast. It's like, what's crazy is when I see, like, I interact with, like, some of the Apex Legends fans on Twitter, and sometimes it's like one of them is being homophobic or something. It's like
you play Fuse.
Why are you like,
Seer.
or like, yeah, someone's like a Catalyst main and they're out here being
Right.
transphobic, and I'm like, what are you doing, buddy? Like,
That is
this
one
ain't
of my
for you.
That is one of my favorite Apex memes, is when the homophobic person is forced to play Catalyst and it's somebody just like crying tears of rage.
I don't believe in non-binary people. Locks Bloodhound. Like, come on. Like, the cognitive dissonance there is kind of insane. And so, like, but yeah.
I think from both of your experiences, though, it really just speaks to how important it is to have those people who are willing to either be a trailblazer like yourselves. I consider the two of you both as trailblazers, as being trans casters, and also people who are willing to lift them up. Chef Philly also, actually, when I had my first hosting gig, hopped on a call with me because we had just been Twitter mutuals for a while, and gave me some pointers, and I'm really grateful because that gave me the confidence that I needed to then go pursue other events. And having somebody that's there to stick by your side, even if they aren't queer, or is making that opportunity is really, really important. And I mean, Calling All Heroes, right, is a great example of that. So.
And like I said, I'm very proud of the work that I've done with Calling All Heroes. And one of the things that like a lot of people have like said to me specific, like when I would meet them in person, is they would say that like, oh, you're an inspiration, or like you're, you know, I look up to you, you know, keep doing what you're doing. It means you're making an impact. And those were things that were kind of hard for me to hear at first. But it was like, you know, I get it. Because it's like there's not a whole lot of trans representation at that level that's been as prominent as like you or I. Like, you know, you mentioned like Fluke for you in Overwatch. Like, there's nobody. There's me, and I was like had that moment of realization where it's like, oh, like it's got to be like just me. And it's great because like everybody's so accommodating and willing to like throw a little bit of rope down to help the next guy down below them. But it's also like, you kind of gravitate more towards the ones you relate to, and there's not a whole lot of people up above me that I can realistically like relate to on that same level, that are going to face the same levels of like adversity that I'm going to. They'll still help me when it comes to, you know, contract disputes or like what kind of moves should I be making, but
Were you going to add something, or was I going to move on to
No,
another
no,
question?
no.
All right, for a second, I just didn't want to cut you off before you chimed in. We spoke, or you just mentioned adversity, and one of the things that I really wanted to touch on today was that adversity and how being queer and how being trans has affected both of your careers over the past few years.
So I'll go first because I definitely have a much shorter experience with that, because I haven't really been in the limelight for too long. So because of that, I don't really get too much hate. I mean, obviously my first tier 2 cast, you know, a bunch of people in Twitch chat, it's just how it is. But when it comes down to it, I don't have that much to go off of, just because I haven't had that many people actually watch me. And granted, it still affects me, like how, you know, my voice or how I'm looking. I want to make sure that I can look as, I guess, feminine, which isn't exactly a great thing because it kind of plays into how other people view me. But I think Cassie has a much bigger experience when it comes to transphobia in the casting.
Yeah, that's one thing that you could probably say. So it didn't actually end up being like a whole huge thing, but there was a whole lot of like, even when I was doing Calling All Heroes, every now and then there'd be some people in the Twitch chat making transphobic comments, and like, I got a gig this past summer to do Overwatch World Cup. EMEA qualifiers, so I got to cast, you know, that's a huge gig, right? Like that's
right.
Like the by far like the highest profile gig that any trans caster has worked in the Overwatch space. I knew going to that big of an audience that I was going to get some kind of flaming, some kind of, you know, nonsense in the chat, but there was an incident where some people who were co-streaming the event said some very inflammatory things about me, and ended up kind of blowing up because they were, you know, like Contenders players who were authorized to co-stream the game, and Blizzard got involved. It was this whole thing, and it's like, it's kind of, I knew that was going to happen. Like, I expected that level of adversity to come through, and it's been kind of nonstop, nothing that I haven't been able to handle, but it's one of those things, right, where every time I go out there, I'm put under the microscope, and everybody is, but it's just like that much more. Because it's like, there's these things that people are going to cling to. And what I started to eventually tell myself about it was like, if the biggest complaint these people have about me is that I'm trans, then I'm doing a damn good job as a caster. Like, everyone else seems to like it, I seem to be fun to listen to, and if the biggest thing, like, I hate she's trans, you look like if that's your biggest complaint, then I'm good. I'll take constructive criticism, but like, that ain't criticism. That's just you like throwing a temper tantrum over things that you can't control.
And it's even easy to tell when people are making, if they are giving criticism, and you can tell whether it's criticism or if it's the criticism because of who you are.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I take a lot of pride in what I do, but I also consider myself like a student of the game. Like, I know I'm not the best at it, and I'm always striving to get better. So if people have legitimate criticisms like, hey, you're like mispronouncing these players' names, or there was this big play that you just completely like missed or something like that, anything like that, I'll be like, oh, you're right, yeah, that's my bad, like I'll work on that and try and be better about that. But if it's none of that, or if it's nothing like, if it's literally just, I don't like this caster because she's trans, then it's like, okay, well, I'm not going to change that. Like, I'm still going to look and present the way that I currently do, regardless of what you think of me. So can we talk about my casting, please? Can we talk about, like, I'm trying to get better at my job over here. Like, let's focus on that.
And one of the other things to know is that you don't get to this level by being closed-minded or being, I guess, closed to feedback is a good way to put it, because you really need to be fully committed in terms of your humility too, because if you are thinking that you're just, the best and that you have no way to improve, then there's nothing you can really do or really improve upon. It sounds like I'm kind of repeating myself, but I feel like that makes sense, right?
I mean, one of the main things that they look for when choosing talent in Element was how receptive are you to feedback? How willing are you to look at what you're doing, how you can improve upon it? And like, I got feedback from the most recent major that was in Atlanta, the guy who did the hosting for that. And now, like, the next day, which is actually tomorrow, I'm getting feedback from one of the NAL color casters. So, and then after that, I'm hoping to get, like, from another NAL caster. And I know that I am not perfect, just like Cassie. Like, I always want to get better.
I mean, I am perfect, but yeah.
Yeah, in more ways than one. So I always just want to make sure that I know that I'm not the best. I may be good, but it's always about improving as a caster, improving my ability.
I also do kind of want to cut in, though, by the way, like, because on the topic of feedback, one of the biggest lessons that I've learned, and this applies to, like, anybody, not just, like, any queer person that might be trying to become a caster, but if there's ever anybody at that starting level, one of the lessons that I learned directly from the professionals was, like, never be afraid to reach out to a professional or anybody you look up to try and get some type of feedback. Because the worst that can possibly happen is they just don't have time for you, so they don't, your DM either gets ghosted or they say no, right? But on the, like, maybe like 50-50 chance that they actually do have the time and they're willing to help you, you're going to get some valuable help from them. They're going to tell you some great information, make you that much better at what you do, and you continue to learn and grow as a caster and as a professional. And that goes also, I think, for like any sort of like broadcasting role. Same for hosting, same for observing, same for anything under the sun.
And definitely reaching out to people in just your circle or even beyond that. If you think about it in the I don't know why my brain just went to LinkedIn, but in the first, second, third, right? Some people might have time, but they just might not have time at that moment too, because everybody is living their own lives. So sometimes, even if somebody doesn't get back to you immediately, they might get back to you, a week or two later, right? Especially if it's a holiday like it is now. So
yeah, Uber promised me a VOD review like a month ago. I'm still like, I still got him on the hook for that. I don't know when it's gonna happen, but like, I'm just like, I know he's busy, but it's like, come on. Eventually,
he's got Christmas sweaters to wear.
He's also got like a family and stuff like that. So it's like, okay, yeah, I get it. You got stuff to do for the holidays.
And we were talking a little bit about starting casting. How did the two of you get into casting in the first place? Was it because you were playing the game a lot? Was it just because you watched a broadcast? Or what was your origin with casting, and then how did you approach those first steps?
So my dad worked in college sports. He did sports marketing. So I was always around sports in general. And I mean, I never looked towards broadcasting as something, but I was always a performer, an entertainer, creative kid of sorts. And when I got my first PC, I played Overwatch, and I joined this competitive Overwatch league called Overwatch Tranquility, and I played in that very, very early on, like season 2, season 3. I was like 14, 15, and they did Twitch streams, and it was very like, hey, we don't care. We just, like, you want to be on it, hit my DMs type of thing, because it was very, very casual, very because we can type of thing. And so I did it, and I just started doing it, and eventually I responded to a broadcast.gg inquiry, which is a very important place to get good gigs, is the broadcast.gg Discord. And from then on, it just kind of spiraled from there. It was about R6. It wasn't about anything, but R6, and just kind of came from there.
For me, it was like Overwatch. I consider my primary game because I have more time in that game than I care to admit. Like, I've literally played it since the open beta. Played on like competitive teams at like Diamond, Masters, GM levels. You know, and after like being like, I don't know if I really want to keep trying to like grind as a player, I kind of hopped off at the GM level and started like coaching and managing and doing pretty much everything but playing the game. Then fast forward when I go to college, you guys can't actually see him, but Unfeatured over here behind the camera, about a year into my time, he comes to my school. This is a guy who works like production, does observing and all this stuff, and he says, hey, I want to try and run some of these some broadcasts on Twitch for our Overwatch teams, which I was playing for at the time. And I was like, not bet, get me on that, because I've been wanting to try casting for a long time, but never really had the mix of the self-confidence and the opportunity. And when that opportunity struck, I was like, I want to do it. So then I did it. I sent the VOD over to Tranquility, over to like BPL, Bad Patch Amari League, all these other like really low-level casting, you know, productions where you can just kind of get in and get your reps in. Practiced, just kept doing it as much as I could, and started the climb, and eventually found my way into the Calling All Heroes family, and I couldn't be happier with where I am in Overwatch right now.
I really want to give a shout out to Tranquility because they're such real ones. I have casted for them when I just wanted to give it a shot, and it was really, like you were saying, is just hit the DMs. How much experience do you have? Is it zero to no? Whatever, and they just let you get that experience with a broadcast, and having those amateur leagues where you can just hop in, whether it be as a player or as it be as a member of the broadcast team, observing, casting, whatever, that's helps people get their start. Yeah. Like the two of you. It's really funny that we both, all of us, at some point were involved with Tranquility. I was mainly a player, but it's cool.
Yeah, it is very cool.
It's a great place for like players, you know, if you're just starting out too and you want to get experience playing on like something a little more organized. Yeah, like go to like Tranquility, BPL, CGL, any of these like starter leagues where they have tiers for anybody to play. And if you want to start to learn production, they're also a great place because it's, you know, it's low stakes. It's just kind of like everybody, we understand like we're all trying to get better at what we do. A special shout out to the BPL crew because they are some of the best in the business, and they don't get enough credit for all the work that they put in at every single tier of the Overwatch scene. I will go to bat for those guys any day.
I think another quick shout out that I do, I know we're kind of on a shout out train right now, but is both His and Hers Live for Apex for some amateur games, and then also Kylie Gabor's tournaments with Slapex.
I need to get on a Slapex.
A Slapex team would be so fun
these days.
And they also do some fun ones. They do some more serious ones with the cash cups. But if you're an Apex player, then those are two leagues that you can try out. Since I'm mostly in Apex now after moving over from Overwatch, I did not survive the Overwatch 1 content drought. So, and another question I had too about the beginnings too is, how did you find out whether or not you were a color caster or a play-by-play? Which one do you prefer now?
For me, I very much so prefer color caster. I do both. Like, I will do play-by-play from time to time, but I prefer color caster because I'm a smartass. I'm a know-it-all. I want to flex my game knowledge when it comes to Overwatch, especially, and it was just a better fit for me to be like in between the fights, being able to break down and be like, okay, this is why all of these things happened, and this is why this is what's gonna happen next. and like you guys didn't really see it, but it was set up by this like one really small play from this player, so be able to look out for them going forward. Like, it's so much more fun to like break it down and talk about the game and like talk about what happened than it is to try and do all that in real time. That's still fun in its own right, and I enjoy it, but color just comes like so much easier for me.
I mean, originally when it started out, everybody kind of did hybrid because nobody was exactly strong on either end. But as I got more and more, I shifted over to play-by-play because I was like, I really like, it's going to sound selfish, I like hearing my own voice and seeing myself in all the Twitter clips.
We're both here because we have big egos.
Yeah.
Just in different ways.
Totally. But actually, after I got some feedback from Jacob, who was the host of the Atlanta Major, I started moving a little bit over to color, gave it a shot, and was like, hey, there's a lot less pressure here, and I'm actually seeing a lot more positive feedback from everybody else. Let's stick with this. And right now, I guess I'm more of a color caster, and on Element, I am a color caster for it, so.
Yeah. And for those who are new to casting in general and some of these terms, could you explain what the difference is between a color caster and an analyst?
Yeah, I mean, a color is mainly the person who gives, like, let's say, statistics. Let's say, in-depth breakdown, the smartass, as Cassie said. And an analyst is somebody who usually is on a desk in between breaks, gives a lot more in-depth because they have the time to actually sit down, structure everything, and not have to just be on the fly like you are in a casting booth.
And then there's play-by-play,
which I mean, it's kind of
play-by-play is like calling out the things as they're happening, like telling you what's on screen right now. Like as a fight is happening, and then once it kind of cools down and you get a little bit of a moment to transition, then you throw it over to the color caster, and that's when they start to fill in with all the other fun quips and breakdowns of what just happened and what's going to happen next, or again, throw in like the quick stats if they have those on hand, anything that's just going to help set up the stakes for the next big high point of the game.
Kind of like keeping the audience engaged while there might be a downtime in the gameplay. People are respawning or something like that.
If anyone's ever watched like pro wrestling growing up, and you think Jim Ross was a play-by-play guy growing up, and he would have either like Jerry Lawler or Paul Heyman, they'd be the color. That's where my understanding of like casting comes from.
when you're out the other.
Yeah, I was gonna say that sounds great for those who have wrestling knowledge. I don't, but I don't know. I started to warm up to wrestling a little bit more.
Just be like me and Golden Boy. Like we'll just be over there shooting the breeze about like what's going on in AEW these days.
So I also wanted to just give a quick shout out here to Localhost Philadelphia. We're at the Block right now, which is their big LAN center facility. Thank you for letting us use this caster's decks to be able to talk to you today. And also, if you are in the area as well, we host these meetups monthly. It's called LFG Philly. You can find us on Twitter and on Discord. We are going to wrap up in a second here with a last question, which is, how do you prepare for a gig?
It's a difficult one because it feels like there's not one way to do it. And I'm going to be honest, I feel like I am definitely lacking when it comes to the best way to do it. And as I continue to do Element, I might, ask a couple of people like, hey, what's the best way that you prep for a gig? But how I usually do it right now is I go through and I look at common trends that I'm seeing on why a team is losing, why a team is winning, and I form a narrative around that team itself and the problems and the strengths that they have. And that's just something that overall, combined with statistics that we normally get, I don't really have to hunt for those. It's just a way to form the story better for me.
For me, it's like it kind of has to be like one of those things where like you're always up to date with a lot of these things, like the current trends, like who's winning, who's losing, what the meta compositions are, or like whatever the meta game is for whatever game it is that you're preparing for. I go in and I try and find like some type of narrative to cling to. Like if it's a tournament sort of situation, I will be like, okay, well, these are the teams that I'm casting. what have they done recently? Like how did they get here? How did they get to this seeding in the tournament, or how did they get like this particular round bracket, whatever it is? Who did they beat to get here? How did those games go? What kinds of like things do they like to play? What's their style? Are there any like known quantities as far as the players go? Make sure I'm like all well researched in all of that, and then whatever that narrative is that I decide, like if this is going to be like an underdog team, or this is a lower bracket run for this team, is lose or win or go home, I set that up and try and like carry that throughout the entire broadcast going forward. I just want to make sure though that going into it, like I have all the best information I possibly can. Any like little side details that I can get that can spice things up just like a little teensy bit. And then I also just run through like terrible wordplay in my head. Like I'll go and listen to like epic rap battles of history and like prepare by just thinking of like what terrible quips can I like have in the back of my mind that I can pull out at a moment's notice. Like
How could I make the audience cringe most with the pun?
Usually it's like mid 2000s hip hop references, but like that works as what like anything that can make the audience hate my guts at a moment's notice.
But it sounds like you're working at a lot of levels here. We have the esports level with the tournaments and the teams, and then you actually have the game level with the maps and the characters and the abilities. So you're really swapping between a lot of context and a lot of knowledge.
Yeah.
Pretty much in a moment's notice. I think it's really impressive. Some people forget how much you need to know about a game and about an esport just in general in order to be able to cast it.
That's why Overwatch and Apex are the only two games that I do, because I don't know anything about any other games. People have told me like, you should try and get into like Rocket League. I'm like, I've never played Rocket League once in my life.
Power hitball.
Try and learn casting League of Legends with all 100 champions and all those matchups.
I haven't played enough League of Legends to know. To me, spectating League of Legends just looks like I'm looking at like a traffic cam through a helicopter from above. Like, I know there's a lot more to it, and I know that it gets like more, but I haven't done enough work to be able to like differentiate that from like anything else. Yeah,
shout out to League of Legends casters. Y'all know so many matchups. It's crazy. There's so much nuance in that game too. But if there are any closing thoughts from the two of you, I think we're about done here. We've talked about a lot of topics.
Yeah. I mean, not much. I mean, you can tune in tomorrow for Element. See me there. Hopefully, my voice will be a little bit better, because I know that you only get half of the amazing complexion of me with the mask on, which usually does suck. But I'll kind of hand it on over to Whoopi so he can formulate his thoughts while Cassie gives hers.
I mean, thank you. Thank you for giving Whoopi the stage, but
they have a lot to say.
I don't know if that microphone is going to hold up. He's thinking. He's not a talkative boyo. While he's thinking, I'll go ahead and steal the mic for another 40 minutes, however long it takes me to shut up. Thank you for having me, and support Calling All Heroes. A lot of these marginalized gender player initiatives that we're seeing more and more of in esports that help support queer talent like myself, or queer gamers, just trying to find their way into things. We're trying to change it to where the narrative is a lot more queer friendly. We're gonna gay all of esports right up.
You heard it here first. And the best way to show support, like Cassie's talking about, is to watch the streams and to retweet the Calling All Heroes post or the casters post or whatever, or just show that you're excited in chat to see some queer talent. So that's all that we got for you today. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you again to Localhost for hosting us. And if you're in the Philly area, then come check out LFG and come play games with other queer gamers. And we'll see you whenever we do our next panel, which will hopefully be in January or February. See y'all later.